Hey everybody, and welcome to Twin Talk, a video discussion show where twin brothers Chris and Kevin drink and draw while talking about comic books, movies, and all things pop culture. We are your hosts, Chris Hart,
Kevin Hart,
and today we're going to be talking about Spider-Man: Homecoming.
Stick around to the end of the episode to see how our drawing of Spider-Man came out. If you like what you see, subscribe to the channel for more content.
Spider-Man: Homecoming is a 2017 film starring Tom Holland. It is the first Spider-Man movie in the MCU. What are your thoughts on this film overall, Kev?
Overall, I think it's a very entertaining film. Solid as hell. Clearly a love letter to the 80s. John Watts did a nice job of like the John Hughes, Chris Columbus movies. We'll talk about that. Mm-hmm. And also, it's a different version. I didn't like it when I first saw it, but upon rewatch, it's a very unique take on Spider-Man. It's definitely Marvel Cinematic Universe centric, MCU centric, but for what it is, I actually really enjoy it.
Tom Holland as Spider-Man got introduced in Civil War briefly. It was a lot of fun to see that, but I was still not sold on him entirely until I saw this movie. This movie I had a blast with, even the first time I saw it. I remember loving it at the time, and I was curious to see how Spider-Man would fit into the already established MCU. And I've always felt that Spider-Man is okay on his own. Even when they were doing like the Sony films previously, like you didn't need the Avengers in that universe. Like Spider-Man in New York is pretty much all you need. I always feel like he's a very self-contained hero. It's great when you can get him into like team ups and stuff, but overall I prefer my Spider-Man in standalone stories.
Friendly
self-contained. Yeah. Accepting this for what it is, MCU Spider-Man, they made a deal with Sony to have this crossover. I thought it really, really thrived in the MCU, the way they did it. There's still some things that I wish were a little bit different, but overall, I really enjoyed the movie for what it was.
I think the highlight of the movie's got to be Michael Keaton. Once again, playing a bird flying character. He was great, man. It's a very compelling, very well-written character, too. The fact that he's, like, surviving on scraps, like that metaphor was genius of like what an actual vulture does in nature, and also to see how it again he ties into like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. His reasons are because the elitist Tony Stark caused the damage, and then like he's the little guy. I felt so bad for him. He bought trucks.
Yeah, when he said he was like, I bought trucks for this job, I was like, ugh.
Yeah, I was like, oh, he's like a
he's
typical,
one of us.
Yeah, he's one of us, man. He's just a typical contractor. He could be my dad for all I know. Like that's the coolest part of what they did with the Vulture. They kind of modernized him a little bit. The wings were awesome, massive. No joke, these things were super deadly.
Yeah, the character design is really great because the Vulture could be a corny character. A lot of people don't take him seriously.
He's underrated.
Yeah. Like, they'll go, it's just that old guy with the wings. But no, like, you know, Adrian Toomes is a badass. Any Spider-Man comic fan will let you know that. There's a reason he's in the Sinister Six.
Yes,
and he's
he holds up.
A recurring character, a villain. Spider-Man has such a great rogues gallery. And we kind of see that in this movie, too. They have little hints of Scorpion.
It opens up the world
Shocker.
a little bit more.
Yeah. But, like, very, very subtly. But even going back to what you were saying about, like, just right from the get, this movie starts off MCU heavy. It's the Battle of New York 2012. You're immediately connected into it. You're brought into that. And then it goes at 8 years later.
And wasn't that was kind of weird because wasn't there a whole theory that Peter Parker was in the Avengers or Iron Man 1
He was in Iron Man 2, the kid with
where
like
he's at the
Stark Expo.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would be cool if that is actually confirmed.
No, Kevin Feige did confirm
really?
that years later. Yeah, he's like, that is Peter Parker.
The seeds, man.
Because
seeds
it was Queens. Obviously, at that time, he probably didn't mean it to be that. But having acquired the rights to Spider-Man with Sony, they were able to retcon that to be Peter Parker in Queens.
That's genius.
Which is really cool. Yeah. And it makes a lot of sense, too. And it's also one of the downfalls of this movie to me.
Yes.
Is that Peter Parker doesn't really get to... I mean, there are scenes of him being able to showcase his genius and stand alone as a character. But for the most part, he's really reliant on Tony Stark.
Too heavily.
And like, you know, we joke around, we say it's Iron Man Jr. or Iron Lad. You know, like he's almost like the sidekick to Tony Stark. And Peter Parker should never feel like that. It does work for the film because that's where the story is going. But even then, it's like, okay, like his too reliant on the suit. It's very tech heavy. And although that had a lot of cool plot points,
it did work out at the end, though.
It works out at the end, yes.
That was one of my cons, is that he's too reliant on Iron Man. Although I guess Karen, the voice, the operating system, was like their version.
Which, by the way, was voiced by Liv Tyler.
Really?
Who was in The Incredible Hulk.
Yeah. Which I guess that was like their take on monologuing and thought bubbles of what the comic books, which is one of the best parts of Spider-Man.
I thought that was
comic
pretty
books
genius in the movie.
So that kind of works. And then towards the end, like when he does do that scene, which is straight from the comic books,
Yes, sir.
and he lifts up the debris and he says, "Come on, Spider-Man!" He's like begging for help. He's this little
Yeah.
teen. That was the moment that turned it for me. The whole movie, I was like, I was like, he's too. It's like there's no Uncle Ben, and so I guess this was their version of that, which I understand why they didn't do Uncle Ben for the third.
Which, by the
friggin'
way,
time.
I'm glad Uncle Ben's out of the picture because my God, Aunt May looks good in this movie.
Yeah.
I love her.
But what the heck was I just saying? Was that, oh, like, so basically, yeah, like he finally comes his own towards the end of the film. So that was the one thing that did turn it around big time for me. And that what makes me like adore this film. I'm like, this is a solid ass movie.
I love when he sees the mask that,
That
fell off.
direction was
Yeah,
chef's kiss.
where it's like half his face, the reflection is half his face is Peter and the rest is Spider-Man, the mask. And he's like, come on,
in
Spider-Man.
the puddle, yeah.
So it's like, yeah, like he believes in the persona of what he was trying to be and then becomes the hero on his own.
Without the suit. So that
Without
was
the
like
suit, yeah.
the big thing.
He hit a PR with that debris. Nice little shoulder press, military press there. But that's a great scene, like you said, to showcase his strength as Peter Parker. He didn't need anyone else in that moment. And on top of that, before he goes to do that fight with the Vulture, he knows that he's in a bad way with this guy.
Yes.
He's the father of his date at the prom.
that
And
reveal was absolutely shocking to me.
bone chilling.
Yeah, I did not see that coming at all.
He knows that nothing good's going to come out of this, but he still leaves the date at the prom to go do the right thing and take down Vulture. And Vulture knew he was going to do it too because he had Shocker there.
He had a backup
punch
plan.
him, yeah. But it just goes to show that Peter will do the right thing. I was going to say the wrong thing.
Selfish,
Peter will
yeah.
do the right thing no matter what because that's who he is as a character. Even if it doesn't benefit him
It
personally.
affects his social life, personal
Yeah.
life, yeah. That was the elements of Peter Parker that I was like, okay, I see there. It's definitely MCU, anchored. But there was a lot of good Spider-Man moments in this film.
Definitely.
And the humor works really well too. Like
Oh, the humor's great.
sometimes
it's
we- you
fast.
know, yeah,
It's very
sometimes
fast,
like the
yeah.
humor could be too much or too cheesy at times with the MCU, but this worked really well. Again, it was clearly a love letter and influenced by 80s movies. There's even one scene where it's like a direct reference to Ferris Bueller.
Yeah,
and it's on
yeah.
the TV, like which I love, by the way. It's like probably like Labor Day, like
Yeah.
homecoming week, early September, late September. Like
People
and
are in their
there's
yards trying to get the most out of the last
summer,
days of summer.
People are barbecuing still. The pool's probably a little chilly at night. Oh, too cold. But
Liquid heaven.
yeah. And that was another great sequence too of Spider-Man out of his element in Long Island, probably in Nassau or something. Represent like Suffolk, Long Island, and he's swinging. There's nothing there to grab onto. So that
Is that
was
like a golf course?
that was
Yeah.
great. That was genius. To me, those were my favorite aspects of this film. Was the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man where he's in Queens. He's going to the deli. He knows the owner. He's asking for the sandwich smashed real thin.
Mr. Delmar.
Delmar Deli. All that stuff when he's fighting the Avengers, quote unquote, in the ATM.
I thought that was great.
Those are great.
I was telling you, I was like, what a great
moments.
concept, especially since they're in the MCU. That's perfect writing. Like, and I could see that in a comic book too. Spider-Man
yeah.
fighting a fake Avengers. Like they have like the
Halloween
the old
Party
Halloween
City
mask.
mask.
Yeah. Even when he first walks into the ATM and he's like trying to like make his like entrance, he's like, yeah. It's like you could tell it's like an awkward 16-year-old kid.
Kudos to Tom Holland too. He's a natural Brit, so for him to get this like really annoying high pitched like Queen's accent, it's like for him to commit to that for 2 hours or whatever. Kudos, man. Because at first I was like, he's a little annoying, but I think
Yeah.
that's the whole point is that he's supposed to be a
he's like a
teenager.
pest.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
like annoying even to Happy Hogan. But
Yeah, the voice.
that every time Jon Favreau was on screen, I was like, first of all, what a genius! I was like, this
Yeah.
guy's done it all. Chef show,
dude is so talented.
Mandalorian, Star Wars, all this stuff, Iron Man,
Jungle Book, Lion King.
everything. This guy's done it all. Friends. But all those things worked when he's like the annoying kid. He's like basically TikToking and like live streaming from Instagram and stuff of like his experience as Spider-Man. To me, those are the things that really worked. Even the banter. I was like kind of like, oh, Spidey's kind of known for his banter, almost like Deadpool. And the one thing that really got me was when he's on the Staten Island ferry and he's like, oh, honestly, I'm shocked. And he's like, does the shocker pun. And it's cool that, like you said before, the opening up of Spider-Man lore in the MCU was very cool to see. Obviously, the Vulture's like very heavily affected by the MCU events. But then you got Scorpion introduced, Matt Gargan. And you got Shocker with like the yellow vest. So that was kind of cool to see the different elements of what we know as Spider-Man. Donald Glover making an appearance
Prowler,
as
yeah.
Aaron Davis. And seeing maybe this will eventually tie into him being the Prowler and, Miles
being a
Morales.
future Spider-Man, yeah.
And that's the thing I do like, too, is that we've seen taller Spider-Man, kind of slinkier. He's young, he's small in stature, and I really like that about Spider-Man because we're supposed to
tell he's a
feel
kid, yeah.
he's like a kid. Yeah, even though he's called Spider-Man, like he's a kid behind the mask, so that's the coolest aspect. Even the suit, it looks very, even though it's an Iron Man suit, it looks a lot like John Romita.
The colors,
The eyes and
Yeah,
the colors and
very
everything,
saturated.
and his size. It was just like very what I pictured when I read the comic books as a kid. But moving into the cons of this movie, the things we didn't like about the film. What didn't you like about the film?
There's not much I didn't really like about it.
Okay.
The thing I really didn't like, but it's like a pro and a con, is that it's very reliant on the MCU. Like
And Iron
like I
Man,
said,
yeah.
him being Iron Man Jr. basically, that annoys me because I want to see Peter Parker being showcased for his genius, his abilities, his character, his heroism. Things like that is what annoys me. But overall, I really enjoyed the film.
I have a few gripes with it, which is why it's not a perfect Spider-Man movie for me, like Spider-Man 2 or Into the Spider-Verse. We said it before, I didn't like how much he relied on Iron Man and Tony Stark's tech. Michelle Jones, MJ, that's clearly the word. That as soon as I heard that in the theater, it was like almost like
Groan worthy.
it was like
Ugh.
this movie's done to me.
Yeah.
Like they made Zendaya look more like a dude than she already does already. she looks dirty.
homeless.
She looks homeless.
Yeah.
The whole movie, she's like, "What are you talking about?"
And I get it.
It's annoying. It's annoying.
She is annoying in the movie. I do not buy her as MJ, especially since her name is not even Mary Jane. It's like Michelle Jones, like you said.
Yeah.
I don't understand
It
that.
feels
that
very
choice.
forced,
It's
yeah.
very forced. I don't understand that choice at all.
I understand because they were trying making like even the characters like Flash Thompson and even the Ned, who was hilarious by the way.
Ned's
The-
great.
I do like his core friends, like that.
Yeah,
That's a
yeah.
great group. They said like, oh, a kid from Queens would have a very diverse cast of friends and schoolmates and classmates. And I remember reading that when the movie was first being made. And I was
That's
like, yeah,
right.
that makes
Yeah, yeah,
sense. Yeah. So I understand why they're trying to shy away from the typical blonde haired or white MJ or Gwen Stacy and make something new. But don't use a MJ. Come on, like create someone different.
even if you make MJ Zendaya like in real life is like pretty good looking,
decent.
Yeah, 7'10". Like she can. There's some pictures where she could look like really, really good looking. And obviously, I'm not here to judge. I got receding hair, 260. But like, she could be a bad woman. You know what I'm saying? But in this movie, they make her look homeless. MJ is not homeless.
And I
Like,
thought the girl too, Liz.
make
she
her
was hot.
Liz. She was gorgeous. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. Like when Liz Allen is more beautiful than Mary Jane in your movie or MJ, whatever. There's a problem.
The CGI is too much. It's too polished looking.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
get
yeah.
it, but like we looked at again the special features, the practical suit. It's no longer like green screen and mocap. The suit looks great
On a
And
physical
then-
body.
on a
Yeah.
physical body, but then when you see it in the movie, it's a little too polished looking. Going back to what I said before too, I like the friendly neighborhood stuff. When he goes to DC and even in this franchise, we're everywhere but home, right? we're far from we're no way home, but we are never home in Queens.
We're never in the
So
borough.
I never understand it. Like that was my favorite parts of this film, and then once we kind of get further and further away from that, I'm kind of like, you're losing me a little bit. But again, they're building an MCU Spider-Man, something different, and for what it is, I appreciate it. But I do prefer, like you said, my Spider-Man in his pocket in
His element,
Queens.
yeah.
Without the team ups and this and that, so those were the only things that I really didn't enjoy about this film. But overall grade, I'm gonna give it an 8.5, maybe even a 9. But I'm gonna stick with 8.5 just because there were a few things that I wasn't thoroughly satisfied with. What would you give this thing?
I'm definitely gonna give it a 9. I think it's a top 3 Spider-Man film.
Yeah, definitely.
And the end too. Oh my god, when he
Yes.
follows the Vulture. Up,
Yes, I forgot to say favorite scene. What's your favorite scene? Obviously, the climax of this film.
My favorite scene.
The tension. I wrote down the tension in the car.
I have two favorite
The dad.
scenes.
The dad talk.
The dad talk is a great scene.
The tension in that car between Keaton and the freaking rearview mirror and
So well directed.
Peter's just like, he's like, Spider-Man's like, yeah, good guy. He's just like trying, you could
Very
tell
nice
he's like sweating.
man.
The minute that door opened, like all of that worked for me. I remember even being in the theater like, but
Everybody.
that
Oh,
tension in
so
the
good.
car, like when he's figuring out that he's Spider-Man, I was like, oh my goodness.
I don't think there was anybody in the audience that was expecting Michael Keaton's Vulture to answer the door.
Yeah.
Because when he answers the door, everybody's like, "Oh my god!"
I was like, my first honest thoughts were that I was like, how does he know where Spider-Man would be? I was like, does he have his family hostage? But he was the father.
The
like,
father, yeah,
And
yeah.
again, another compelling thing of that he's trying to feed his family and
Yep,
be the
yep.
provider. Excellent stuff. But I just thought it was so funny how he's like, oh, I'll be right there. Gumdrop is gonna have the dad talk, and he pulls out a Glock. Right? Yeah, he's got like a 9mm.
He's like, "Does she know?" Yeah, it's like, "Oh my god."
That was great.
The one scene where he's like, good old Spider-Man. I was like, my balls hurt when I said that. I was like, oh my God.
Keaton,
like,
man, great actor.
Bone chilling.
Great actor.
Yeah, he is a great actor.
But that was definitely my favorite scene, was probably the climax of this film. Once I heard that Vulture was going to be in it, I was like, oh, okay, first of all, finally. And second of all, I was like, oh, I can't wait to see that aerial dogfight battle in New York City, like in them Spider-Man in the fighting above the rooftops, skyscrapers. They completely blew away my expectations and went even further. They're in the freaking clouds on this airplane and fighting. I was like, oh my God, the stakes here. He's in the hoodie suit. So I was like, if he falls, he's done, man.
Dead.
I was like, he's got no parachute, he's got no nothing. So that was an amazing climax, especially even too when they go to Coney Island and stuff. That was great.
Do you remember when we were younger, there was like, it must have been either been like a Universal Studios ad or something, but it was like Spider-Man versus Doc Ock on top of a blimp.
Yes, I
remember that? If we could find that on the internet somewhere, let's pull it up.
It's like deep in there.
Yeah, but that was like, we were really young, but I remember seeing that as a kid and like losing my mind, because like that was the first like live action. This was even before the 2002 film. And I remember being like, oh my God, I want to see a Spider-Man movie so bad, live action. But the end of this reminded me of that, when they're fighting on like the Stark jet. When they're fighting on that and he's like almost in the turbines and stuff, I truly was like horrified. I was like, oh my God, like he can die at any moment. And the stakes were super high, and like they were basically like in the atmosphere at that point. That scene really hit me. I was really scared for him, but like it's very entertaining, very white knuckle, like you said, great popcorn film. And the end credits too. I forgot to mention when we did our Into the Spider-Verse review.
Yes.
The end credits animation is gorgeous. Yeah. And this movie rivals that too, with like the different like textures they do, the different animation styles they do. And I wish more movies, like Shazam did that too. Shazam had a very great end credits like animation and all that stuff. So I want to see more movies do that instead of just black with all the names. Like make it exciting, people.
Creative,
yeah. You have all these people working on it. Go off if you can.
Definitely had a good time rewatching this. We got one more to go, and then we got right up to No Way Home. We have Far From Home is next, and we've done every single Spider-Man movie live action. We've rewatched and reviewed it. We've drawn a bunch of characters from the comics and films, so definitely check out those videos.
Guys, please don't forget our giveaway. We're going to be putting together a package of every art print from this Spider-Man review series, as well as a Funko Pop or an action figure and a comic book, either from my personal collection or going to the mall and getting one, or a comic book shop, local comic shop. Support your local comic shops. Kevin, give them the rules. Hit them with them.
You have to be a subscriber to our channel, completely free, youtube.com/TwinTalkBros. If you're watching this, you already know that. Like our video of the Spider-Man No Way Home Trailer 2 reaction. Comment either on YouTube, Instagram, or TikTok what you're excited for the movie, or tag 2 friends, and you'll be entered for that giveaway. It ends December 17th, the day of No Way Home. Anyways, that about wraps up today's episode of Twin Talk. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, comment below to join the discussion, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more content. We'll see you next time. Peace!